Welcome to episode 7 of this one. So we're the third week into the month, and yeah, we're still 3 this time, and we are here to talk about a book that Stephanie has picked for us.
Yes, we've got Stephanie Burgis here again, and she has picked The Sorceress Transcendent by Casey Blair. I'm going to attempt to read just a little bit of the blurb, not the full blurb, just to give an idea, because I think like the very first initial idea is quite a clear one in this, that everyone's sort of like, oh yes, I want to read more about that. So. When Varius, the greatest general of the Aurelian Empire, is forced to flee his homeland, there's only one person he can turn to, a powerful sorceress and once his most deadly enemy. Thera is the only combatant who's ever escaped the war between their peoples. But with memories of how they kept each other going from opposite sides of a battlefield, when a bleeding Varius knocks on her door, she lets him in, even knowing what will follow. That's
It's
very
just so
much
much fun.
oh, it's the immediate moment, isn't it? You're
Oh
the
my
only
gosh.
person I could think of to go to. You're like, oh, okay.
You know you're gonna have a good time.
hmm
Indeed. And oh God, we did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, where did you find this book? Was it the author you came across first, or was it the book that kind of pulled you into it?
I knew the author a little bit because we're both part of this fantastic Discord that honestly I'd recommend for any professional fantasy romance authors. It's called Faro Feb
Oh,
Yes,
and
we know
yes.
it.
hmm
fabulous. Yeah. So I had chatted with Casey on the Discord, and there's a place in the Discord where ARCs are often available for fellow members. And to be honest, that didn't in any way guarantee I was going to love it because, everyone knows you can think people are fantastic and yet what they write might not be to your taste. Um, but this one, I thought, well, sounds really fun. And if I don't like it, I'll just never say anything about it. We're fine.
Yeah.
I read it and oh my God, I just devoured it. It's like, this is the best fantasy romance novella I have read in so long. I just love this. I want so much more.
Yeah.
I I love everything about it. I love that he calls her his best enemy. you know, I there's this one point when a whole bunch of really powerful magic workers have descended on her cottage to try to take him under arrest, and she's like, "No way in hell." And he, uh, he at first he tries to like sort of make her think about like, wait, you could be in a lot of trouble if you defend me against these people from your own country. And then when he realizes she's not backing down, he's like, well, far be it from me to refuse you a little light exercise.
Yeah.
And so she
Yes.
goes out and just destroys them, which
Yeah.
he thinks is incredibly hot.
It is just so fantastic. Like the world building in it is amazing in that
Mm,
you get so much of a sense of it like so quickly. I'm always in awe of that
Absolutely.
with novellas. Um, Jess wrote this question, but I enjoyed the columns too. I was just gonna
yes.
read it and I was like, oh, yeah, yeah, we were talking about all the different elements, like just when you think you've got to grips, there's something more coming going on, isn't there? And
Mm.
we love the columns.
Absolutely.
And what parts of it stood out for you in terms of the world building as well?
I really loved the fact that there's so much nuance in it because it isn't like one. So they've both met because they were, you know, lead generals essentially of opposing armies from opposing nations, and yet neither one of them is the good one, and neither one of them is the bad one.
No.
And what's really terrible is the endless war, which is being fueled
Mhm.
by the greed of a few people on top on both sides who are never going to risk their own lives in it. And I really enjoyed that nuance. I
Mm.
really enjoyed that understanding that like the worst part is actually all the death that's happening on the way.
Yeah,
um, that's something you don't always see, especially in such a short romantasy, that level of
yeah,
nuance. And it was part of what made their romance work is that neither of them was fighting for a clearly terrible side, and neither of them was, and also they'd been quite careful along the way that they they both had opportunities when they were fighting against each other to kill each other. And they both managed to do plausible deniability for their own side to not kill each other
Yes.
somehow.
Mhm.
Like, what a shame. I just couldn't get them, next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those
Oh,
are some of the things that I really enjoyed about the world building, was that feeling that there were real people on both sides, and, that there was going to have to be something really monumental to make it okay at the end, because you couldn't just say, okay, this side wins, we're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And there was like a spectrum of the type of people that were fighting on each side, even within, like, not just at the top, those the terrible people that were doing it for their own reasons, but even within, how people who were more committed to the cause, or who weren't and were just following orders but might not have
Absolutely.
understood everything that was going on. Yeah, so much. Definitely.
Well, yeah, this leads into the next question. We've discussed in the last episode and a bit now about novellas, and you've written some yourself. How tricky do you find it to get all of this kind of information into a lot less text than you'd get with a
So
80 odd
tricky.
thousand word novella? Novel,
So
sorry.
tricky. And honestly, I was so blown away by how Casey did it. I'm going to go back to my own writing for a minute and say, when I was first drafting my first novella, Snow Spelled, there was a point when I was midway through the draft where I sent it to my agent. I said, do you think I should keep this a novella, or should I turn it into a novel? And she said, well, you could turn it into a novel, and that'll give you a chance to really dig down into the world building. And I was like, I'll go for the novella this time.
Yes.
It was 2016. It's just been the election. I was like, you know what? I'm going to give myself a break. And I feel like Casey did not give herself a break in this novella, and she just went for it, and it worked. And which is really hard to make that work without massive amounts of info dumping that become tedious. And she didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
Well,
Or
yeah,
ending up with like unanswered questions for people as well. Yeah.
Yeah, this is as I sit and write, I'm kind of in awe of these people. It's like my Waynesville moment of I am not worthy when I read these things. It's like, oh my, can I just sit with you for 10 minutes and you explain to me how this works? Because damn.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely an underappreciated form,
It really
I think, the
is.
novella, for
I
sure.
love novellas.
Yeah. Right. So the relationship between Various and Thera gives like a unique spin on the enemies to lovers kind of trope. You kind of talked about this a bit before, but like, how did that work for you? Like, what did you enjoy about that? How they built that dynamic?
I loved that they both were so turned on by how strong the other was, even when they were fighting against each other. I loved how there's this bit where she talks about one of the things she used to really look forward to on the battlefield was when she'd be able to get some trap going that he hadn't expected. And then she carefully prepared a quip to say, to him.
Yeah.
So like she couldn't wait to say the thing she prepared. Like she was fighting to impress him, and he was fighting to impress her. And they were both really, really into it. I just think it works so well, enemies to lovers, when they see and appreciate each other's strengths, maybe even in a way that no one else completely does. They're really seen by this person, whether or not they're on opposite sides.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely. But this is leading straight perfectly into the next question. That from the first page, the sexual tension between the two of them is off the charts. And then it goes into Closed Door, which, as me as a reader, definitely, and Emma a little bit, we're not so used to seeing. Do you think this added to the tension between the two of them, not having the physical act so there on the page? And do you think it changes anything about the romance arc or how the book progresses?
It's an interesting question. And I also know that I can't remember where I got this one. It was, I think, maybe from Casey's newsletter. She did write a bonus epilogue, which is just a spicy scene, So she clearly wasn't trying to, avoid it out of any hesitation to write that. But I think it worked really well in this one. And I don't have as a reader, I have to say, I don't really particularly have a preference between open and closed door. Usually, if it works in the story, I'm happy either way. And for me, it worked here. And I think it was, I don't know, it was that, like you said, that tension was so great. And it did, in some ways, I think, help probably in this particular case, keep that tension, really
Yeah.
sparkling through it, that you didn't get that sort of cathartic release of it on the page.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
we were on the edge of the seat, and then we said, "Oh, the newsletter's got this," and then it was
Yeah.
just, yeah,
I think that's it. Like Jess said, I kind of read both.
Mhm.
It's yeah, like you say, it depends what's working with the story and the
mm,
characters and stuff. But you can find it when you have an open door. If a lot of the attention has been on just that build of chemistry, and then you have the sex scene, it
Yeah,
can feel like the air kind of goes out of the balloon a little bit, and you're like, oh, what else is going on now? But yeah, it was kind of it keeps it going a bit, I guess, if we're
absolutely.
just yeah.
Yeah, and I get exactly what you mean about the air coming out of the balloon, because obviously, it can work incredibly well to have
Mhm.
the, cathartic sex scenes in there. But in this case, I mean, I've also seen it work badly, like you said, where you're like, okay, I got what I want to, because what in the stories where what you really want is that, and then it
Yeah.
happens, you're like, okay, so now this other stuff is going to happen, I guess. But you know,
yeah, but
Yeah. But that's the beauty of having that balance as well. And also just the beauty of
Mm,
like fantasy romance, I think, in that you have
absolutely,
this additional plot and all the other stuff going on too. So like you can
yeah.
have because you have the ups and the downs, don't you? You have like high points and then
Mm,
like for pacing and lulls, but and you can like exchange between the two. This is more for the romance bit, and then oh, okay, so now we can concentrate a bit on plot that's going on. And yeah, it kind of goes, doesn't it, straight from when they finally admit their feelings for each other, and then they move into like,
mm,
the big climax, but not that
yeah.
kind.
pardon the pun,
I knew
yes.
Jess would say that. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's but they've already learnt to work as a team, haven't they, at that
Yeah,
point? Like they've wholeheartedly gone into that and supporting each other prior to them admitting that they want to have a relationship. So the two things aren't
absolutely.
necessarily dependent on each other.
And
Yeah.
I love that part of why I think it works so well as a balance is that you can see with the character arcs, there's a wonderful sort of progression, because first each of them just needs safety for themselves, and then they're desperate for safety together. But to be totally happy at the end, they need to make a real difference and provide safety for other people as well.
Yeah.
And that is such a strong emotional progression for both of them, even that it wouldn't have been a happy ending if it was just, oh, good news, we can hide out in this cottage forever and we'll never be in
Yeah,
danger again.
Yeah. Yeah. And they've learned all of that by being enemies as well in
Yeah.
the way they've learnt to read each other. So in the
Yes.
like the final the battle, they can like tell what's going on with each
yeah,
other,
they know
even
where
when
each
they're
one
not
is, and
able to
Oh,
yeah,
communicate.
yeah.
It's so clever. It's really, really so well done. Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, talking about like the ending and like you're saying about getting the happily ever after kind of for everybody. Um,
Mm.
yeah, what do you think life will be like post the war with it's Fabiana and how do we say this one? Lysithea?
Lysithea, I think is yes,
Lysithea, there we go.
yes, we'll go with.
Yeah, with the two realms and yeah.
Well,
Where would you
I'm
prefer to
hopeful.
live? Yeah.
Good question. I think I'd prefer to live in the cottage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That cottage is amazing.
I
It's
was gonna say
like
we didn't have
Yeah.
that one, did
huge.
we?
I mean,
That's the
honestly, I could go into the cottage with a nice garden with that can repel intruders if needed.
Yeah, killer plants is always a bonus.
lovely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It was kind of like we were
Absolutely.
talking about off the recording, weren't we? About like having this little cottage or this house that looks very normal, and then you go in and
You open the
there's
door and
like
it's very
the
different inside.
magical in it's like the TARDIS, isn't it?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's full of like craft books and things for designed to help people find their passion when they have been forced their whole life to train
Yes.
as a warrior in some way, whether they wanted to or not. And I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. I mean, this is something that resonated for me personally when the heroine talks about how, yeah, she started painting because she's not very good at it. And so some of us have to learn to accept and be imperfection. Like
Yeah.
basically, if you've spent your whole life thinking you're only acceptable when you're the best, it can be incredibly important to find a way to enjoy things where you are never going to be the best by a long way.
Yeah, that is actually that's very true.
Yeah, I was going
Not
to say, yeah.
feeling you have to master something to enjoy it. You can still enjoy something just by the doing of it. It's yeah, that is.
I will never forget my daughter's cello teacher once said to me, from her dad, she was repeating his line that, if something's worth doing, it's worth doing badly. And I thought,
Yeah.
wow, I never heard it that way before. And it really,
No.
I was like, as a
Yeah.
lifelong ambitious perfectionist, but I have tried to remember that, as I do various other things. And I did manage to learn how to bake, which was my great triumph with that, because I'm never going to be on Bake Off. And in the past, in my 20s, every time I try to bake, I'd be like, oh God, this is terrible. I'm never doing this again.
I have to say, I follow you on Instagram and your cookies look amazing. If you were closer, I'd be around each time you bring out a batch of those. They're
Really
amazing.
yummy. They're really messy and really yummy. And that is, but like a triumph. That's something I can be very happy with.
I'm
What I was gonna
very
say.
similar. Yeah, I'm like,
Oh,
if
yeah.
it's rough and ready, is like, as long as it tastes good when it goes in the mouth.
I was going to say, I'm not going to join in this because my baking is probably rough and ready, both visually and while in the mouth. So that's something I need to maybe build on.
Enjoy it. Just enjoy it.
Indeed, indeed.
Absolutely.
All right, so I think that we're all done for questions now. Unfortunately, we could talk all day.
Yeah.
We could. This is really fun. I love it. We get to sit around talking about great romantasy.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's the
I mean,
again,
that's basically the whole reason we did the podcast.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah,
we just
nobody
like
was
chatting.
doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us
Yes, thank
and
you
for
so much for your time
introducing
today.
us to this awesome book as well.
Yes.
Thank you too.
Yeah. We'll be back on the 25th of March with our topic of the month, which is, what was it? Adaptations. we're doing
Adaptations.
this month. Yes. Just out of curiosity, to throw a last question at you. Have you got any ideas who you'd want in an adaptation of your book? We're in the Witch Queen.
Oh, wow. What a great question.
Do you do
Do you
like
kn-
a little, do you cast them in your head from like an actor
Oh, mood
or
boards
somebody
and
like that,
such.
mood boards, or because
Yeah,
it's
do you know
easier if you
what?
do that.
I usually don't, so I can only tell you who I cast in my head for the third book of the series. Because as I've been brainstorming that, this is the first time one of the characters hasn't been in the earlier books, particularly.
Mhm.
I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
she shows up in the
Mhm.
second book, but you don't get to see inside. She's a very enigmatic figure in the second book, so I'm
Okay.
really trying to work her out.
Mhm.
So I would say Ilana, the queen in the third book, the Ice Queen, probably Gugu and Bathara.
Okay.
And her marriage of convenience,
Ooh.
new wife, I would say a much younger Renee Rousseau, probably.
Wow. Oh, cool.
But I don't know. All I can say is when I looked at the cover of the American version of Wooing the Witch Queen, I thought that guy looks a lot like Harry Styles.
I'm gonna have to go back and look at it now.
There we
Yeah.
go. And that'll do. We're all good with it.
That will do. Oh, and I guess how long is it going to be before you see the cover of your next one, or have you already seen it?
I have not seen it and I can't wait. I had to give a brief for it back in, I can't remember if it was December or January before I'd actually finished writing it.
Yeah.
And so I'm waiting with bated breath right now.
Oh, can't wait to see.
Post-Christmas
They're
gift.
both
Love it.
gorgeous. Both the UK and the US covers are really good. Yeah. So sorry I lobbed that one at you right at the end.
That was
Fine.
fine.
Keep going.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.